Hi guys, you can't see me, I'm behind the camera, just making sure that everything is lined up so that you can see my terrible handwriting as clearly as possible. Today, let me get in front of the camera. Today we're going to do something a little bit different because in the past, me and Nick have been doing these live Q&A, so you can ask any question that you want and we will answer it. And now we're going to start something that's a little bit different. I'm going to do a lesson on the whiteboard. You can still ask questions. I'll go behind the camera every once in a while to check any questions that you have, and I'll put up some answers. I might answer them now, or we might come back and answer them in the comments later. So we will answer your questions if you have them, but we're going to focus more on doing a lesson based on some questions that people asked me this week. Okay? So what we're going to do today is take a look at a task 2 based on the topic of recycling. Then we're going to move on to a task 2 about news media. This is from the IELTS test, the actual IELTS test from this week. So I talked to a lot of different... Okay. Alright, sorry guys, I think the live stream got cut off for some reason. I don't know exactly when, where, or why, but I think it's working again now. So I'll just say what I said before. We're not going to do a live Q&A anymore so much. We're going to be focusing on doing live lessons, which I think will be more useful for you. You can still write all your questions below, and we'll do our best to answer them as quickly as we can. We'll comment the answers, and I'll go behind the camera sometimes and check your questions. So I will answer some of your questions, but I'm going to focus on this lesson. And today's lesson is 3 different things. First, we're going to take a look at a task 2 recycling that one of the members of our group, a very active member named Orny, commented for us. Then we're going to take a look at the task 2 IELTS writing question from this week, which was about news media. And then finally, we're going to take a look at the task 1 from this week, which was about pie charts. All right, so let me just double check last time, just to make sure that it hasn't been interrupted. Yeah, good, and we've got 300 people watching. Sorry, 3 people watching. And yeah, let's get started. So here's the question that Orny, one of our most dedicated members, wrote in. I paraphrased it, changed it a little bit. I'm not sure where she got this question, but it is an okay question. This is the type of question you could find on the IELTS test. I don't think some websites you go to, you're going to find questions, especially websites maybe like IELTS Simon, which is a good website, but you might find some questions that aren't necessarily going to be on the test, not realistic, good examples. This one I think is pretty good. You could find this question on the test. All right, so some people, many people claim, that means think, not enough waste is recycled. They say governments, so that's short for governments, should legislate, make laws about recycling. Legislate recycling. To what extent do you think laws are needed to make people recycle more? All right, so there's a few things that are interesting about this question, but first let's just take a look at what the topic is, waste. That's the first thing to notice, waste. What does that mean? Sometimes an IELTS question is going to come up where the students have no idea what it is. There was one about genealogy, family history a few months ago. None of the students that I knew in Vietnam understood what that was. They didn't understand the main topic. They all got 3s, 4s, maybe 5s for task achievements. So look at the main topic. Hopefully you understand it. If you don't, just take a look at your partner next to you, the person taking the test next to you, and they whisper in their native language and ask them what it means. I'm pretty sure you can do that and it'll be okay and no one will notice. Yeah? So try that. Cheat wherever you can. All right, so waste. You probably know what that is. Probably got a lot of waste in your country. Human waste and other waste, just rubbish, trash, things like that. So it means trash, rubbish, trash, rubbish. Yeah. So that's the main topic, is recycle. Also recycling, right? So not enough waste is recycled. That means when you send it away to be made into something new. You recycle your paper products and they get made into new trees. No, but they get made into like other pieces of paper, cheaper paper for poorer people, right? So they say governments should legislate recycling. A big mistake that a lot of students have is they see the topic, waste, recycling, and that's it. They just go with it. They say, what are the benefits of recycling? What are the drawbacks of recycling? So many students do this. You wouldn't believe how many. Like maybe, I don't know, roughly 30 or 40%. Like a crazy number of students just see the topic, waste, recycle, and they just write the benefits of recycling and the disadvantages of waste. Let me just double check to make sure that the video is recording, because I have the camera turned around. Yep, everything's good. Sorry about that. So they just write about waste. That's it. The good and the bad of waste. Don't do that. You have to look at the second sentence. I know for most of you guys it's obvious, yeah? You wouldn't just like read the first word and say, oh, this essay is all about some. I'm just going to write about the word some. Obviously you read the whole thing. But don't just focus on recycling, the positives and negatives. A lot of students do this. I think there's a couple reasons. Maybe because their English level isn't good, or they're just lazy. You know, they see the topic, waste, they learned how to write about the good and the bad from whatever terrible teacher they had. And they're like, okay, I'll write about the advantages and disadvantages. I know some phrases I can say, the main advantages, the main disadvantages, although, however, and they just kind of lazy throw it together, okay? Don't be that student. Because if you just write about the advantages and disadvantages of recycling, then you're going to get a 3, a 4, or a 5, depending on the examiner. I think it would actually be hard to get a 5 in that case, because it'd be really off topic. So you probably end up with a 3 would be a little bit harsh, because it is kind of the right topic. So it would give me a 3 or a 4. And we'll talk about that more when we talk about news media, because that was a big problem this week for students on this week's IELTS test. So coming up, we're going to be talking about this week's test. First, we're going to go over this one. It was sent in by Orny. All right, so blah, 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 waste, recycle, that's the topic. But the second part, governments should legislate, make laws. They should say people must recycle. You know, it's illegal to not recycle. Or they make that you get like tax breaks if a company recycles a lot. Or they help to pay for recycling, free recycling, whatever. The laws aren't clear. It's not like you go to jail for the rest of your life if you don't recycle. You know, it's not like the death penalty for anyone who doesn't recycle. Although obviously that would be the most effective way to get people to recycle, is to chop off their hands or give them the death penalty. But there's a lot of different laws you could do. You know, you could send them into outer space. You could do something terrible to their family. You could shave off all their hair. A lot of different things you could do if someone does not recycle. But it doesn't specify. It could be any type of law. But it's about the government. Should they make laws so that people have to recycle? Because, as you know, and as I know very well, I'm not going to recycle unless if someone forces me to recycle. You can tell me all day about the arguments, like the dolphins and like the fish with like plastic on their face, and you know, like the world is exploding. All that stuff is not going to make me recycle. Not going to happen. And that's true not just for me, that's true for everyone. We're not going to recycle. It's not going to happen. Yeah? We're not going to save the world that way. That's why governments have to make laws. So that's the topic. Recycling, should governments make people recycle? Simplest way to say it, should governments make people recycle? Now, Orny had a question about this when she wrote it to me. She wrote me a private message. Remember, you can write me a private message if you have a question, and I'll try to bring it up. That's what she did, wrote me a private message. Here we go. She had a problem here because usually this is normal. I think this part's okay. She understands that. But then it would usually say something like, to what extent do you agree or disagree? Or discuss both sides and give your opinion. There's no both sides here, but you know, do you agree or disagree? To what extent do you agree or disagree? But this one's a little bit different. Let's take a look. to see how you write about this one if it's different. To what extent do you think, so we still got think here, so you still know it's an opinion essay. Do you think, you're going to have to give your opinion, what you think, even if you're incapable of thinking, you still have to say what you think. Laws are needed to make people recycle more. So don't get confused by this. Basically, this just means the same thing as do you agree or disagree? To what extent do you agree or disagree? To what extent do you think governments have to make laws? So laws are needed. Governments must make laws to make people recycle. I'm never going to recycle on my own. It doesn't matter if every polar bear in the world is standing outside my house with a sign, and they're all dead. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to recycle. So the government has to do something. Does the government have to do it? Or can individuals do it on their own? Is it a good idea for governments to do it? So don't get confused by this part here. I'm not sure how realistic this is. This doesn't sound exactly like an IELTS question I've seen before, but it is possible. So if you see something like that, it's just, don't get too confused, read it carefully, but it just means, to what extent do you agree or disagree? So for this question, let's just take a quick look at exactly what you would do. Now, the main problem, this one doesn't erase very well. I can use that red anymore. The main problem that a lot of students have, I find, in IELTS is with their test 2. So the biggest problem, if you watched our lessons, you would know that the biggest problem is not understanding the question. So not writing about the correct question. The second biggest problem, if you understand the question, if you don't understand the question, you're going to get 4, 3, maybe 5 for a task achievement. The second biggest problem is related to their main ideas and support. Main ideas are not important. You do not get marked in IELTS on the quality of your main ideas. If you don't trust me, check the band descriptors. In the band descriptors, we trust, always. As long as your main ideas are relevant, so you can't write about, like, you can't write about something totally different, like about how the environment is being hurt by recycling. That's not really relevant to this question. It has to be relevant to, should governments make laws to make people recycle? So as long as it's relevant, why governments should, why governments should not, then it doesn't matter the quality of it. You're not trying to write down, like the greatest idea ever that you could write like a book about, like a genius, like Steve Jobs or whatever, and you're just trying to write the most amazing reason ever. Don't worry about that. Stupid, dumb, easy main idea or reason. Then what you do get marked on is lots of support for your main idea. The more support you have, the better score you're going to get. The worse your support is, the worse score you're going to get. So let me give you an example. A lot of students like to just list reasons. So governments should make laws about recycling because people will not do it on their own. Oh, and also governments are very powerful, so they can do it. Oh, and also the environment really needs protecting, so it's important that governments step in now. Oh, and also governments can work quickly. There you go, you've got 4 reasons, that's a 5, because you didn't support them. Instead, choose one reason. Governments should legislate recycling and make laws to make people recycle, because otherwise people will not recycle. Not enough people will recycle. So your main idea would be not enough people will recycle on their own. That's one main idea. Now you want 3 or 4 sentences to support that one main idea. Okay? So it's almost like an upside down, or just like a pyramid, I guess, right? If it's like a pyramid, if you think of it a little bit like a pyramid, right? And you've got your idea here, your main idea, got one main idea, and then all of this is support for that main idea. You don't have 2 main ideas. You have one idea, and then all of this down here, support. That's how you get a 6, a 7, an 8, even a 9 for your task achievement with a mountain. It's not a pyramid anymore, right? Let's make it a mountain, yeah? And now the main idea is the snow. Right, so I just made that metaphor worse, more difficult to understand, and less memorable. But anyway, one main idea, a mountain of support underneath it. It could be an iceberg as well. Lots of support. The main idea is that people won't do it on their own. How could you support that? You know, people have known about the problems related to environmental problems for decades, and they still haven't recycled enough to make a major difference. And then talk about the reasons why people might not. They're too busy, it's too expensive, and then what the government could do to make them recycle. Support that one main idea. Same thing. So because this one is agree, disagree, to what extent do you agree? You could just talk about one side. You could just say about why governments should make laws, but then you need two different reasons, lots of support. It's a little bit easier to talk about both sides. So I recommend talk about both sides. Agree, disagree, try to talk about both sides, because then you're more likely to have good main ideas and lots of new support for it. You won't repeat yourself. So you might say another reason against it, which is that, you know, something to do with personal freedom, or the fact that a government in one country can make laws, but then that means other countries are going to not have laws about it. You know, so America makes some laws to make people recycle more, and then China, to be more competitive economically, has more loose laws related to recycling, and it can cause, you know, economic problems because of that. Okay, so that could be your main idea for one reason why governments should not make laws about it. Could be about personal freedom and personal responsibility, whatever. Choose one, your mountain, your pyramid, your iceberg, tons of support. That's how you get a high score for task achievement. Yeah, that red is terrible. I can use it. All right, so let's move on. I hope that answered your question. I'm just going to go behind the camera quickly for a second to urinate in my office. Oh, we've got a lot of people here. A lot of people. All right, and now let's move on to the second one. This is today's IELTS question. I lied to you not. Well, not today's, this week's. Okay, I lied to you. I'm not going to lie to you again. This is the IELTS question from this week, and, you know, forget about this trash about recycling. You know? Now let's move on to the news media question. Raise your hands. Does anyone know exactly what the question was this week? I know, and I'm going to write it for you. So the question, choose black, favorite color. The question this week was news media is becoming more influential or many people believe news media is becoming more influential in our lives. Positive. They also think it's a negative. I think this one was agree, disagree. Yeah? This is a negative development. This is a negative. In case if you don't know, negative means bad. Development. Development just means big change. Alright, so, and it was agree or disagree. To what extent do you agree or disagree? Or do you agree or disagree? Agree. Now, I talked to quite a few examiners about this. Quite a few real examiners to get their opinions so I could bring back to you guys the main problems that people are having so you can make sure you don't have the same problem with this one. If anyone took the test this week and wrote about this question, feel free to write to us with your with the essay that you wrote. You can try to remember your exact essay, the exact essay that you read. Write it into us, and we will let you know what your band score is. We might charge you, not actually sure, you know, but we'll charge you something reasonable, like $5 or whatever you feel, you know, or $2, whatever you can spare, you know. We don't need much, we just need enough to stay nice clothes and to have new whiteboard markers and to buy a new whiteboard every week, because I don't like erasing them. After I'm done with this, I just throw it out and buy a new whiteboard. So we just need money for that. So whatever you can contribute, a few dollars. But anyway, if you took the test this week, you can write us your essay. We'll tell you what your band score was. Try to remember it and write it exactly the same. I know that's impossible, but do it anyway, and we'll tell you what your score is, just for a few dollars or something, okay? Anyway, I talked to a lot of real-life examiners, I saw them. It's easy to, if you want to find an examiner, there's a few key places you can look to find an examiner, right? So if you go to like the happy hour at your local bar, around 5 or 6 o'clock, after examiners finish their marking, you're going to find 90% of examiners getting drunk to forget about all the essays that they had to read from that day. So just go to your local bar, happy hour. You can find scum of the earth, disgusting examiners there. And you don't want to talk to them. Examiners are nice when they're doing the speaking test. And it's like, how are you? Like, what kind of chocolate do you like to? Why do people buy a present? They're very polite when you do the test. And then if you see them outside of the test, when they're totally drunk or strung out or hanging out with like various local women from that country, you'll see a different side to the IELTS examiner. In fact, it would be a nice blog post someday, off hour, or what IELTS examiners do in their free time. Someone remind me, I want to write that blog post and bring you guys real evidence about what types of people they are, because I know. Anyway, getting distracted. So the topic here, let's go over it again, news media. This was the big problem for most people. Not for most. Of the examiners I talked to, they said that maybe 40% of people were having a major problem here. And the problem they were having here is they don't understand what news media is. Okay? So what is news media? Let's take a look at what it can be. So news media can be newspapers. Okay? A lot of people just thought it was like internet and online and things like that. But no, the media, the news media, is any way that the media communicates news to you. Newspapers, what else? It could be magazines. And obviously both of these are online now, so it could be online news, and that could be online newspapers, online magazines, TV. So that tends to be like cable. There are a lot of cable news channels. CNN, what's Donald Trump's channel called? The Donald Trump channel. Donald Trump channel. It's my favorite channel. I don't like the news, but I do like the Donald Trump channel. So you can watch DTC. You can look for that on your phone and try to find DTC, my favorite news channel, the Donald Trump channel. 24 hours, nothing but 156 letter tweets at all times. The Donald Trump channel, best channel you can get for news. So those are the news, those are different news. That's news media. Different ways that you read the news. Now, where I live in Vietnam, the examiners I talked to said that there were a lot of problems with this because a lot of people didn't write about news media. A lot of people wrote about new media. So like this meant like new technology and like cell phones, and like people will use any excuse that they can to write about cell phones. Okay, that is every IELTS student in Vietnam, where I'm from at least. Well, I'm obviously not from Vietnam, where I teach and I've lived for the last 6 years, is always going to try to write about cell phones. Even if the question's about crime or it's about education, they're always going to try to write about cell phones, Everyone, it's just, just a fact of life. The sky is blue, grass is green. Students just want to write about cell phones, It's just a simple thing they want to do. They just want to write about the good and bad for cell phones. So that's what a lot of students wrote about, media, technology, people not exercising enough. I know, you think I'm joking, but a lot of students did write about that sort of thing. People spending too much time on their phone. And that is a little bit relevant to the question, a little bit related, because if you are news media influential, maybe people are spending too much time reading the news on their phone, checking it all the time. My partner on this project, who hopefully isn't watching right now, Nick Kemp, I know he's addicted to the news, and he watches the news 24 hours a day. He puts it when he goes to bed. He puts on like Charlie Rose, before the accusations and everything, and he just listens to news while he sleeps. And he puts it on his earphones and he listens to it while he walks around the house. And even when he's he's talking to his friends, he's got the news in one ear. 24 hours a day, news magnet. So you could write about that and people using phones a little bit, but it's not really what the question is about. The question is about news media. And the other thing is becoming more influential in our lives. So the fact that it's influential, so it's the impact it has, okay? So this would mean that people don't have their own opinions anymore. Like you see something, maybe you see something like someone was arrested or there's some big story. Donald Trump said something, which is a big story now. And then you have to read the news article to see that I don't know how I feel about this. And then you read the news article, I hate this. And you read the news article, oh yeah, they say it's okay, so it's okay. So you get your opinions from other people. That's one of the influences it could have. It could be distracting. People pay too much attention to it. There's a lot of, it's addictive. It's definitely addictive for people. And they use it in the same way that people look up celebrity gossip or play video games or any kind of addiction that you have. Everyone has addictions. You can't help but be addicted to different things. It's just one of the many addictions that helps people get through their day and feel better about themselves at the same time. So you need to talk about how it influences our lives, why it's important, And this is a negative development, so it's agree, disagree. You can agree with this and say it is bad. It's bad because people spend too much time reading the news. It's bad because they trust the news too much, and a lot of it is, like fake news, or it's biased, or you can't believe things that come in the mainstream media. You don't know how true or accurate it is because businesses own it, and businesses aren't always going to tell you the truth. And then you can go off on whatever like crazy conspiracy theories, like and then JFK was killed by the mafia, and no one landed on the moon. We know that no one landed on the moon, obviously. You go off on your conspiracy theories or whatever. Or you could disagree with it, and you could say that it's a positive development. That the fact that people read news all the time is good, they learn more about the world, they stay informed, and the most important thing in a democracy, obviously, is that people are informed. Most of you probably don't live in a democracy, but it's not my fault. I'm American. We do what we can to make the rest of the world democratic, or not. And so you could disagree and say that it's really important that people know about things, and the news is really important for making people knowledgeable about issues, so that when they go to vote, they can make the right decision and elect people like Donald Trump, or hopefully someday Donald Trump's son. All right, or you can talk about both sides. You can say, this is again what we always recommend, me and Nick at HowtodoIELTS.com, talk about both sides. Talk about why it's positive, talk about why it's negative, and then give your opinion. You can include it in your introduction as well, but make sure you give your opinion, choose a side overall. If you don't do that, you'll get a band 5 for task achievement. So, to summarize, the main problem that students were having was they weren't writing about news media, newspapers, magazine, online, TV. They were just writing about new media, or they weren't quite writing about the correct topic. They didn't understand what it was. And then the other question is maybe they weren't writing about how it's influential in their lives. Some people just wrote about why the news is good, why the news is bad. Now, it's not totally unrelated if you write about that, because it's going to be very similar to influential, but you're probably going to end up with a 5 for task achievement, depending on how you do it, possibly a 6. But if you want to guarantee yourself a 6 and get above a 6, you really have to talk about how it's more influential, and this is either good or bad. Or the ways it's good that it's influential, making people more informed so they can, in a democracy, they can make better decisions when they vote, or about how it's bad that it's influential, wasting people's time, propaganda, making everyone think in the same way and have the same opinions. Okay, so that's what you needed to do in order to get at least a 6, and that's what most students didn't do this week with their task 2s from the examiners I wrote. Now, I also talked to an examiner who's basically an insane person, and he told me that he hadn't given 6s to any task 2s in months. And one of the things is that he also said that he's becoming more. So he wanted people to talk about the fact that in the past, the news media wasn't as influential. Maybe it was just on TV. Maybe people got their opinions from their friends, not so much from the media, or they got it from thinking themselves, or they got it from books. And now, because it's more influential, that's not good. I don't really think, in my opinion, you didn't really have to focus on that is becoming part. You could, you definitely could, but I think you could also just write about how its influence is good or bad and get up to a band 9. That would be fine by me. But like I said, I talked to another examiner who thought for band 6 and above they had to do that. So that just shows you the IELTS test can be inconsistent in terms of how examiners mark it. That's one of the big problems with the test. The other problem is, if you got this question this week, you don't know anything about news media, you don't even know what it means, you're going to get a 3 for task achievement. If you had a question from 2 weeks ago and it's just about, education, should we build more schools? It's an easy question. You're going to get a 5, 6, 7 for your task achievement. So your score can go up and down points, 1 or 2 points. The grammar, vocab, that stuff won't change so much, but it can go up and down points just because of the topic. The most important factor on your IELTS test has nothing to do with you. It has to do with what week you take the test. Was it an easy week with easy questions? You get a higher score. Was it a hard week with harder questions? You'll get a lower score. Now, that doesn't mean you're powerless, that you're a victim of fate. You have power over that, that's for most students. Most students, it comes down to luck. Easy question, better score. Difficult question, worse score. However, if you practice a ton, you practice all the topics, you practice all the time, then it's not going to matter if you get a tough question on the test. Because you're a veteran, you're a professional, you're a pro. You're going to be able to handle it no matter what comes your way. That's the key to preparation. The reason you prepare is, hopefully you'll go to the test and you'll get an easy question. It won't be a hard one. But what if you get one that isn't easy? You can't expect the easy one. Prepare so that when you get that hard one, when the pitcher throws a fastball, you can still hit it. Don't expect, or when he throws a curveball, you can still hit it. Prepare for every type of pitch that IELTS can throw at you. Fastball, curveball, slider. I hope you guys understand American baseball, because otherwise this metaphor makes no sense to you. So prepare, and you'll be able to hit all of them. Don't prepare, and then maybe you'll just get lucky and you'll connect and hit it. But it's just luck. You don't want it to come down to luck. To eliminate luck, practice. The more you practice, the less luck. The less you practice, the more luck you need. And you're probably not. If you consider yourself a lucky person, then yeah, whatever. All right. Tired? Let's go on to the last one, which is from this week, the pie charts. Now, I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to be able to remember exactly the data about the pie charts. I do remember that they were circles. So that's the first thing that I remember about this week's question, that they were circles. They were all 3 down, but I'm going to draw them. A pair of boobs. No, I'm just kidding. A pair of eyes and a nose, Get your head out of the gutter. All right, and it was about coffee, which is exactly why I'm drinking coffee right now. Thematic relationship. And it was about coffee. So one was about the production, or did it make export? Yeah, it was like export or produce or something like that. The other one was about consume, so drink. And the other one was about the profit, who gets the money from coffee. Yeah, so again, I write that down, coffee. about coffee. So I really don't remember exactly what the numbers were at all. But I know for this one, I think there was one country for exports. I mean, there was one country that was really small. The other countries were maybe medium sized. I think there was one that was a lot bigger, right? So you got this one. So you had various different countries there. Consumption, I think, was similar. There was one country, it was Japan, it was like 7%. It was pretty small. There was Europe. Europe had a really large one. It was Europe. There was like the US or something like that. And then the blank space country. And then profit, remember profit was almost half for one of them. I think it was the roasters, the people who, ironic, right? The people who roast the coffee and export it get most of the money. And then some of the money, and then it was mostly even. Maybe there was some small percentage for another one. Okay, this is about jobs, the jobs related to it. Okay. All right, so there you go. That's what you had. Now this one I think is a little bit controversial because I know of the examiners I talked to, there are a few different ways that people will mark it in terms of the general overview. And that's what I mainly want to talk to you guys about is the overview. So for an overview on IELTS, you should try to include as much as you can. Nothing specific, not like 50%, half, but try to include as many areas as you can. So I know what most people did on the test, which was they said for exports, this country was the biggest. For consumption, this one was the biggest. And for profit, this one was the biggest. A lot of examiners this week were giving that a 6 or a 7. However, other examiners required a little bit more, which was they required you to have a little bit more of this information. Not list out every single element right away, but maybe list the big one and the small one. Big one and small one, big and small, that was okay. Or to kind of rank them. You know, this one followed by this and this. This one followed by this and this. This one followed by this, this, and this. Okay, so as for an overview, this one, usually you write your overview at the beginning. For this week's, I think it made the most sense to write your overview, to do 3 different paragraphs on each of these, and to write your overview at the beginning of those paragraphs. Okay, for these two, they were both countries, and there was some overlap. Actually, this was regions, and that was, yeah, they were similar. There was some overlap in the countries between these, so you could put those together in the same overview, possibly. This one had to be a different one because it was about the people who produce it. Okay. After that, this is actually one of the easier. So the overview maybe was a little bit difficult this week, but the actual writing about it was pretty easy because you've got 3 really simple ones. You don't have to worry too much about your structure. You just say this was the hardest percentage at 58%, followed by this one, this one, this one. Pretty simple, you know? Just write a couple sentences on this, a couple sentences, a couple sentences. Make sure for task 1 you include everything. All these different countries have to be mentioned because they're all important, okay? If you leave out any of them, then you're leaving yourself at risk to get a 5 for task achievement. If you leave out one, it's probably not going to bump you all the way down to a 5, unless if it's like major, like if you left out this one, it would definitely bump you down to a 5. If you left out one little one here, examiner might not notice, might not care, but do try to include everything. Always include the data and the unit, so percentage. This one was percentage. Yeah, they were all percentages, I think, yeah, with the pie chart. So include that, include the unit. This one did not show time, it didn't show 1991 to 2004, so the vocabulary that you use in this one is totally different. You can't say it increased dramatically, it decreased sharply, anything like that. All that you can do for this one is talk about 1 in 10, 2/5, the majority, the largest, the second largest. So for your task 1, you have to learn 2 different types of vocabulary. The increase and decrease for line charts and things like that, that show over time, as well as the proportions, half, a third, majority, minority, for ones like this, okay? So make sure you don't waste all your time just studying one group of vocabulary, and then you get to the test and you've got a different type, you don't know the vocabulary for it, you're going to get a low score for your vocabulary. Make sure you study a broad range of the different types of vocabulary available. Remember, on IELTS, there are only 2 graphs. People think there are 4. There are not. There are only 2. Now, I know you're thinking, this guy's an idiot. I already know there's pie charts, line charts, bar graphs, and the other thing. What's the other one? Tables. The 4, right? No. Those are 4 different pictures, 4 different images, but they all represent data. There's 2 because they can either represent data over time, 1991 to 2010. That could be a line chart, a table, a bar graph, a pie chart. It could be any of those. It's just a different way to show it. Or they cannot show time, like this one, just be a fixed time. There's only 2 because that's what you need to do. When you look at it, don't think about, oh, it's a bar chart, it's a pie chart. Think about, is it showing time? Then I have to use vocabulary like increase, decrease. Is it not showing time like this? Then I have to say minority, majority. That's why there's 2. For your point of view, you should think of it as there being 2 different graphs because that's going to help you know what kind of vocabulary you should use. That's the important information. All right, let me get behind the camera quickly, and I'm just going to leave you guys to admire my handwriting, which has improved a lot since I was a kid. It's still bad, but it has improved a lot. And I'm just going to... Okay, I got a question. Yeah, I got lots of questions. Don't feel like answering any of these questions, but I'll give it a shot. When to talk about both sides, when it says discuss both sides. If it doesn't, then you can talk about only one if you want. You always have the choice to talk about both. Allah Afdal. Love saying Middle Eastern names. I hope that answers your question. Allah Afdal. I'm sorry, I love mispronouncing Middle Eastern names. So I hope that really answered your question. Allah Afdal. I hope you really liked it. Allah Afdal. I'm going to like your stuff there. Allah Afdal. And yeah, but again, how to do IELTS, we recommend that you talk about both sides whenever possible. A lot of support means examples. One long, specific, detailed example. That's Huma Saima. Mohammed, when do we have to use having plus verb? I'm not sure about that. It's not really, it's a very complicated grammar question. So having eaten. Oh, so like having eaten that. Oh, it's complicated. I'll come back to that one. I'll write a comment. Negative development. Yep, good. Thank you for Randeep Thurk for all your notes, which are very helpful. Yeah, very good notes there. Saima, one main idea in development. Yes. So the one main idea, Saima, would be something like, well, you can look above you to see what Thurk wrote. People are, it's a waste of time. People waste too much time. They get addicted to reading about the news and then develop that. Give an example of that. Talk about it for 3 or 4 sentences. Hi, Orny. You can always go back and watch it. I did answer your question at the beginning, so you can go back and watch it and let me know if anything was unclear. You can write me a message, and I'll make it clearer for you. What will be our thesis statement if we choose to stay in the middle? You can't stay in the middle. Choose a side. Okay, Simon? Choose a side. My Facebook ID is David Lang. And I'll link to some of the blog posts for some of the other questions, but that's it. All right, let me get in front of the camera to say my last bit. And that is, I want you guys, we've got a big blog post coming up this week. I've been working on it super hard. It's all about motivation. It's about the difference between a successful and an unsuccessful IELTS student. I've been teaching for more than 10 years. I mean, that changes every time I exaggerate it. But anyway, I've been teaching for a long time. I know the difference between a student who's going to be successful and one who isn't. I know why. I know exactly why. I know exactly why in every situation. And we've got a blog post coming out in a day or two, probably tomorrow, that's going to detail exactly what the difference is between successful IELTS students and unsuccessful students. 100% guarantee. So stay tuned for that. Over and out. Good night. Enjoy the rest of your life. Enjoy the rest of your night. Stop studying IELTS. Give yourself a break for 1 minute and then get right back into it. More IELTS, 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 IELTS. All right. Good night, guys. Hope you enjoyed.